Now, starting off, you're probably overwhelmed. You probably already started watching some YouTube videos trying to figure out which direction you want to go and start. The tools that I'm going to talk about today are going to be tools that are going to be able to get you to building something this weekend if you want to, because you don't have to invest in thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tools to be able to get started building something this weekend. And honestly, that's a good thing, because right now, you probably don't know actually what you want to build. Like, all you know is that right now I need to build this. 10 years from now, you may be building Windsor chairs because that's what you actually enjoy. But it takes a little bit of time to figure that out. And so the tools that I'm going to suggest are going to be tools that are going to get you into the trade and start getting your hands into everything, but they're not actually going to be tools that you're going to be able to do super intricate stuff. But I don't anticipate that you're going to be doing a lot of intricate stuff when you start out. So with all that in mind, the skill saw is the first place that I would start. A good skill saw will be able to allow you to break down sheet goods. It will allow you to be able to cut lumber. It's going to allow you to do a lot of stuff. I've had this for like 13 years. It's the very first skill saw I ever bought, and I still use it every day when I'm out here working. Another saw that you can look at is a jig saw. Now, this jig saw here is a Bosch, and this jig saw is a great little jig saw. It allows you to be able to cut curves. Now, I just didn't end up buying a jigsaw at first because I didn't have a lot of need for them, because most of the time when I was cutting stuff, I just needed to be able to cut stuff straight. So over time, I ended up buying that, and that's been a great jigsaw to use, and I would definitely recommend it. After that, you're going to want to get a drill and an impact. Now, this is a DeWalt drill and an impact. You don't have to buy DeWalt. There are lots of other brands. When I started out, I had an 18 volt Porter cable set. These tools here are not what you have to buy. You can start out with a Ryobi or a Ridgid or a Craftsman, and you're going to be fine starting out with something like that. I also have a 12 volt set of Milwaukee's. Now, I would not probably start out with the smaller. I use the 12 volt more than I do the 20, but when you're starting out, you would probably be better off to go with a bigger platform, the 20 volt set. That way it will cover everything you need to do down, and you won't be in some situation where you need a little more horsepower. The next thing I want to talk about is a couple of tools from Kreg. Now, a lot of people dog on Kreg for a lot of different reasons, but I've used these tools forever, probably 10 years, and they work fine. This is a Kreg AccuCut, and this is a Kreg Ripcut. Now, both of these tools actually attach to your skill saw with this. You can see this little attachment that I've got here that's mounted on this. This just stays mounted on it because this is super handy, and I just use it to break down plywood. When you get that Ripcut and that AccuCut, you can buy both of those together typically in a kit. I want to say around 120 bucks or so, but that's going to open up a world of opportunities for you when it comes to breaking down plywood or even just lumber in general. You can start breaking down a lot of stuff and doing a lot of stuff. The next thing you need to go to though after that is a miter saw. So you can see here I've got a Bosch. This is a big miter saw. This one slides out. It'll lay over to the side and do your 45 miters. It'll do all kinds of stuff. It's also $650, and you don't need that saw today. What you need to buy is just a very simple miter saw. They're still going to be $200 or $300. They're not going to be sliding. They're not going to be anything. I would probably try to get a 12-inch if I could, but that's just me. I would probably do that just because it's going to give you a little bit bigger cut capacity. Now, understand something. You buy a 12-inch miter saw, it doesn't mean you get a 12-inch cut capacity. It means that the blade is 12 inches, but when you take that blade down, the cut capacity is typically only like 6 or 8 inches on a 12-inch saw. So just remember that it's not, it doesn't translate the same. So if you can, get a 12-inch saw, and eventually you're going to work your way up. That's what I did. I had a Porter cable, 12-inch, and all it did was just go straight down, and it cut lumber off. And I built a lot of tables and a lot of furniture and a lot of different things for other people and for my wife for years with it. And it did everything that I needed to do. So you can totally do that with just a simple miter saw. That will get you going. The next thing that I would probably look into would be an 18-gauge brad nailer and an air compressor. A lot of times you can buy these tools in a kit and they come together. So that would be kind of where I would start. This is going to shoot small nails, but it's extremely, extremely handy. They just kind of come in a clip of nails like that. I use this all the time. I bought this 12 years ago. Still going, still does everything I needed to do. I've also got other nail guns now, but this is, in my opinion, the most versatile size. It's not as small as a pin nailer, but it's not as big as like a framing nailer or something like that. This is just a good go-to all-around nail gun. Is an 18 gauge nail gun of some sort. After that is another tool that's a little bit controversial. It's the pocket hole jig. This allows you to be able to put pieces of lumber together, to join them together with screws, but the screws are hidden in pockets. You've probably seen it. You've probably seen people talk about it. You may even seen it on your furniture at home or your cabinets or different things. Pocket holes are very versatile and they're very handy. Now, they do have a little bit of a bad reputation, especially among woodworkers, but I love the pocket hole jig because it allowed me to be able to get into woodworking and to make everything more accessible when it came to woodworking. And so that's the reason that I'm a firm believer in this thing. Now, I put a lot of tables together with it, table legs and joined aprons and things like that, and they tell you you can't do all that and not to do all that, and I understand all the rules behind it all, but I've done it. I've still got some of that stuff in my house, and it's fine. Primarily now I use it for cabinetry, and I don't use it like I used to use it before, but I'm just telling you, get that. You will thank me later, because it will open up a world of opportunity of different things you're going to be able to do. The next thing you're going to want to do, though, once you get it built, is you're going to want to sand it. And you're going to want a random orbital sander. Now, this sander spins, and it also moves randomly, so that it helps to move the scratch pattern around so that you don't end up with a bunch of scratches in the wood when you're sanding. You know, typically these are 80 or 100 bucks, and that's a great place to start. You don't want one of those little mouse sanders. You don't want any of those other things. Just get a random orbital sander. It is a jack of all trades. It'll allow you to be able to do everything you need to do very simply. And you probably noticed that I actually have this bigger hose connected up to it, and this is a vacuum hose so that I can suck all the dust out, and it helps to keep the dust down in here tremendously whenever I'm sanding. That might be something you want to consider as well. Get a vacuum cleaner. You can hook up to that. That'll change your life also. So after that, I would get a router. Now, this is a small trim router from Bosch. It's called a Bosch Colt. You can usually get these for about 100 bucks or less. But a good small trim router is a great place to start. When I first started out building tables, one of the things that I did on the tops to try to keep the tops and the corners and all this stuff from being so sharp is I would take a sander and I would kind of go around the top at about a 45 to try to round that top over a little bit so that it just wasn't such a sharp corner. Well, you can do that easily with a router. Makes it very simple. Take a little bit, it's called a round over bit, and you can just run around it. It'll smooth it out perfect. So even though you can build so much stuff with those tools that we just talked about, a table saw is something that you don't have to have now, but you can totally get, and it's going to change the game for you. This is my favorite tool in the shop, but it's not one that I tell people they have to get first. Because first of all, this is an extremely dangerous tool if you're not very familiar with it, one. Two, it's a very expensive tool if you're going to get a good one. And so for that reason, I didn't buy one for a couple of years just because I knew that I wanted to buy one that was pretty good. And the one that I bought, which was this one, was 1,400 bucks when I bought it 10 years ago. So because of that, I had to wait for a while. And I built a lot of stuff without it. A couple of things you want to think about. First of all, you're going to want to make sure it's a table saw that has a good top. Now this has cast iron all the way across it. This thing is solid. This is a great top. But more importantly, you're going to want a good fence system on this, okay? This is what is going to make or break your table saw, is whether or not the fence is any good. Now, there are saws out there that are very expensive. The SawStop, it's got the flesh sensing technology that it won't, like if your finger got in front of it, it'll stop and it'll save your finger. But you're also paying for that as well. So typically you're going to get a saw like this. This saw in a SawStop is probably $2,500, $3,000. So it's definitely not cheap. There are a couple of benchtop options that I think you could probably give some consideration to. One of those being DeWalt. So lots and lots of people have built a lot of stuff with that benchtop DeWalt saw. And you've probably seen it here, there, and yonder, Lowe's, different places, they carry it. But it's still fairly expensive. I still want to say it's at least 600 bucks, but it's a good saw. I mean, so it's something to give some consideration to if you don't want to go to this price range. definitely look at something like that. You can also look at like a hybrid saw. They're the ones that have their own stand, and so they're a little bit bigger and they kind of stand up on their own, but they're not quite as expensive if you're going to like the bigger style cabinet style saws. So another tool that you don't have to have yet, but you need to be considering, is a planer. Now, this thickness planer is about 30 years old. It's a Shopsmith brand, and it works great for my needs. It's a 12-inch planer, and they make much bigger planers out there, but for starting off, a 12-inch planer is a good way to go. DeWalt makes one that has great reviews and people really like. It's more of a benchtop style, but again, it has great reviews. So I would give that some serious consideration when you got ready to think about that, because you're going to be able to take pieces of material. If you need everything to be at exactly 3/4 of an inch, or everything to be exactly 7/8 or 1 inch, you can plane those down. You can buy material from sawmills and things so that you're able to take rough lumber and mill it down to exactly whatever spec you're needing for your project. So the next two tools that we're going to talk about are a couple of tools that I honestly don't use that much, but they're very handy when I need them. And so because of that, I just have not bought any big fancy versions of these. So the bandsaw that I've got is one of them that I'm going to talk about, and that was actually given to me by a friend of mine, and it's a smaller Win brand bandsaw. And that bandsaw, it does everything that I need it to do, because I'm not typically milling down a bunch of stuff trying to cut up a bunch of 1x6s or make them thinner, or 2x6s or anything like that. So also, I've got a small bench top drill press. Same thing. It's a Porter cable drill press. Actually got that for my birthday. My parents bought that for me 4 or 5 years ago. It works great. It does everything I need it to do. And so I've just never upgraded it to any other model, because I find that most of the time I can do anything that I need with a drill, but a drill press is going to allow you to be able to bore holes exactly perfect, exactly straight. So that makes a big difference depending upon the projects you got going on. So the brands that I've talked about here today, you don't have to use those particular brands. There are lots of options out there that you can choose from, especially when you're looking at budget conscious brands. So things like Ryobi, Rigid, Craftsman, they're going to work perfectly fine for you as you're getting started. And then over time, you may find that you go ahead and you upgrade a little bit, or you make some changes. But right now, they're going to do everything you need to do as you get started as a beginner.